The stars were cold and quiet in the deep parts of space where no one wanted to go. In this dark corner of the galaxy, there was a nebula called Karth. It was a place of dying suns and broken worlds. Nothing grew there. Nothing lived there anymore. Nothing except Varrock. Varrock was not like other beings in the galaxy. He was tall, almost 3 meters high, with skin the color of ash and eyes that glowed like dying embers. His face carried many scars from many battles. His hands were large enough to crush metal. But the most terrible thing about Varrock was not his body. It was his heart. His heart was empty. Long ago, before the wars destroyed his world, Varrock had been different. He had a family. He had friends. He had celebrated festivals with his people under the twin moons of his home planet. But that was before everything burned. That was before he became the creature that the whole galaxy feared. Now, Varrock had only one purpose in his long and bitter life. He hated joy. He hated celebration. He hated anything that reminded him of what he had lost. And so, for 300 years, he traveled from planet to planet, from system to system, stealing every symbol of happiness he could find. The galaxy called him many names. The thief of joy, the shadow of festivals, the destroyer of light. But most species simply called him the Grinch of the stars. Wherever beings gathered to celebrate, wherever lights shined bright and music played, Varrock would come. His massive ship, black as the void itself, would block out the stars. His army of drones would descend like metal locusts. And when he left, nothing remained. No decorations. No lights. No ornaments. Only darkness and tears. The Galactic Council had tried to stop him many times. They sent their best warriors. They sent their greatest ships. All of them failed. Varrock was too strong, too smart, and too determined. He had nothing to lose, and that made him the most dangerous being in the known universe. It was the year 2847 by Earth's calendar when Varrock turned his attention to the human colonies. Humans were a young species in galactic terms. They had only been traveling among the stars for about 200 years. But in that short time, they had spread far and wide. They built stations and settlements on moons and planets across many systems. And wherever humans went, they brought their traditions with them. The Winter Festival was the biggest celebration in human culture. It happened every year when Earth completed its journey around its sun. Humans decorated their homes with lights and colors. They gave gifts to each other. They sang songs and told stories. They put up trees covered in beautiful ornaments. The festival reminded them of home, of family, of hope. Varrock hated it more than anything. When his scanners detected the massive wave of celebration energy coming from the human sectors, something stirred inside him. It was anger. It was jealousy. It was pain that had never healed. How dare these young creatures be so happy? How dare they celebrate when his own world was dust and memory? He set his course for the Sol system, where humanity had begun. The news spread fast. Varrock was coming. The Grinch of the stars had chosen his next target. Panic swept through the human colonies like wildfire. Colony ships scattered in every direction, trying to escape. Military vessels prepared for a battle they knew they could not win. Messages flew back and forth across the communication networks, filled with fear and desperation. On the small moon of Titan, which orbited the ringed planet Saturn, there was a research station. It was not a big place. Only about 300 people lived there. Scientists, engineers, and their families. They studied the strange chemistry of Titan's atmosphere and the frozen seas of liquid methane that covered its surface. The station commander, a woman named Minji, called an emergency meeting. Her face was tired and worried as she looked at the people gathered before her. "We've received a warning," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. Vorak's ship will reach the Inner Sol system within 48 hours. All major colonies are evacuating. Earth itself is preparing for the worst. A young engineer named Taiho raised his hand. What about us? Should we evacuate too? Minji shook her head slowly. Our transport ship left 2 days ago for scheduled maintenance on Mars. It won't be back in time. The nearest rescue vessel is 3 weeks away. We are on our own. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. They could not run. They could not hide. If Vorak decided to visit Titan Station, they would have to face him. Taiho felt his heart grow heavy. He was not worried about himself. He was worried about his daughter. Yuna was only 7 years old. She had her mother's bright smile and her father's curious mind. She loved the winter festival more than anything. For weeks, she had been making paper decorations by hand, cutting snowflakes and stars and little angels to hang around their small living quarters. After the meeting, Taiho walked slowly back to his home. The hallways of the station were decorated with lights and garlands. Someone had put up a small tree near the cafeteria. It all seemed so fragile now. So temporary. When he opened the door to their quarters, Yuna ran to greet him. Her small arms wrapped around his waist, and she looked up at him with those big brown eyes that always made him feel both happy and sad at the same time. Appa, look what I made. She held up a paper snowflake, cut from white paper with small scissors. It was not perfect. The edges were crooked, and the cuts were not even. But it was beautiful because she had made it with love. Taiho knelt down and took the snowflake gently in his hands. It's wonderful, Yuna. The most beautiful one yet. I want to make one for everyone on the station, she said proudly. So everyone will be happy for the festival. Taiho felt tears forming in his eyes, but he blinked them away. How could he tell her what was coming? How could he explain that a monster from the stars wanted to steal all their joy? He hugged her tight and said nothing. Above them, far away but getting closer with every passing second, Vorak's ship moved through the darkness like death itself, coming for everything they held dear. The galaxy had seen many species face the Grinch of the stars. All of them had trembled. All of them had wept. All of them had lost their light. But the galaxy had never seen what a human child could do. And neither had Vorak. The ship emerged from the darkness like a nightmare taking form. It was enormous, larger than some moons, its surface black and rough like burnt stone. No lights decorated its hull. No colors broke its terrible emptiness. It was a ship built for one purpose, to steal joy from the universe. Vorak stood on the command bridge, looking down at the small blue marble called Earth and the tiny dots of human settlements scattered around it. His red eyes moved slowly across the scanner displays. So many targets. So much celebration energy. He could feel it even from here. That warm glow of happiness that humans created when they came together. It made him sick. It made him angry. It reminded him of everything he had lost. Begin the harvest, he commanded, his voice deep and cold like stones grinding together. His second in command, a thin creature with gray skin and no expression, nodded. Which target first, Commander? Vorak studied the map. Earth was too well defended. The Mars colonies had already evacuated. The stations around Jupiter were mostly empty. But there, orbiting the ringed planet Saturn, was a small signal. Titan Station. 300 life forms. Full celebration energy readings. And nowhere to run. There. Vorak pointed with one massive finger. We start there. The ship changed course, moving toward Titan like a predator stalking wounded prey. On Titan Station, the alarms began to wail. Commander Minji's voice came through every speaker in the station. All personnel, this is not a drill. Vorak's vessel has entered Saturn's orbit and is approaching our position. All non-essential crew should gather in the central shelter. Security teams to your stations. May whatever gods you believe in protect us all." Taiho grabbed Yuna's hand and started running toward the shelter. All around them, people were doing the same. Families clutched each other. Friends said quick goodbyes. The lights flickered as the station system struggled to handle the emergency protocols. "Appa, what's happening?" Yuna asked, her small legs working hard to keep up with her father's long steps. "A bad person is coming, Yuna, but we're gonna be safe. Just stay close to me." They reached the central shelter, a large room in the middle of the station designed to protect people from radiation and accidents. About 200 people had already gathered there. Some were crying. Some were praying. Some just sat in silence, waiting for whatever would come. Taiho found a corner and sat down with Yuna on his lap. She was trembling slightly, but she wasn't crying. She was brave, his little girl. Braver than most adults he knew. "Is the bad person going to hurt us?" She whispered. Taiho wanted to lie. He wanted to tell her everything would be fine. But he had promised himself long ago that he would always be honest with his daughter. "I don't know, little one. I hope not. But no matter what happens, I'm here with you. I will always be here with you." Yuna nodded and reached into her pocket. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was another snowflake, this one even more crooked than the others. "I made this one special," she said softly. "It's a lucky snowflake. I was going to give it to Ayama when she came back from her trip. But maybe we need the luck more right now." Taiho felt his heart break a little. Yuna's mother, Jiwon, was a doctor who had left 3 weeks ago to help with a medical emergency on one of the outer stations. She didn't even know what was happening here. She might never know. Outside the station, Vorak's ship took position above them like a massive shadow. The ship released hundreds of drones, each one about the size of a small car. They were made of dark metal with glowing red sensors, and they moved with terrible purpose. The drones entered Titan Station through every opening they could find. They cut through doors. They crawled through vents. They floated through corridors like metal ghosts. And wherever they went, they took everything. They took the lights from the hallways. They took the garlands from the walls. They took the small tree from near the cafeteria and pulled off every ornament, every piece of tinsel, every string of colored bulbs. They took the wreaths from the doors and the stars from the windows. They took everything that shined, everything that sparkled, everything that brought joy. The people in the shelter could hear them moving through the station. The sound of metal on metal. The crash of decorations being torn down. The hum of the drone's engines as they carried their stolen treasure back to the massive ship above. Yuna pressed her face against her father's chest. "They're taking all the pretty things, aren't they, Appa?" "Yes, baby. They are. But why? Why would anyone want to take pretty things?" Taiho had no answer. How could anyone explain the actions of a being so broken, so lost in his own pain, that he needed to spread that pain to others? The raid lasted for 2 hours. When it was finally over, the drones retreated back to Vorak's ship. Commander Minji's voice came through the speakers again, shaky but trying to be calm. "The drones have left. All personnel may leave the shelter. But please, prepare yourselves. The station has been stripped." Slowly, carefully, people began to leave the shelter. Taiho held Yuna's hand as they walked out into the corridor. What they saw made them stop. The hallway was bare. The walls that had been covered with lights and decorations were now empty gray metal. The floor that had been scattered with fake snow and colorful ribbons was now just plain floor. Everything that had made the station feel like home, everything that had made it feel like the winter festival, was gone. Yuna looked up at her father with tears in her eyes. "He took everything, Appa. He took all our joy." Taiho knelt down beside her. No, Yuna. He took our decorations. But joy is not something you can put in a box. Joy is in here. He touched her chest, right over her heart. And no one can steal that. Not even a monster from the stars. But even as he said the words, Taiho wasn't sure he believed them. Around him, people were crying. Children were confused. Adults were lost. The festival they had been preparing for with such hope and excitement was ruined. Or, so they thought, because Varrock was not finished. He never just took and left. He always came in person to see the faces of those he had robbed. He wanted to see their tears. He wanted to see their despair. It fed something dark inside him. The announcement came like a death sentence. Attention all personnel. We are being boarded. The creature known as Varrock is entering the station. Do not resist. I repeat, do not resist. Yuna squeezed her father's hand tight. The paper snowflake was still clutched in her other hand. And without knowing it, she had just become the most important person in the galaxy. The airlock door opened with a terrible hiss, like a great beast breathing. Cold air rushed into the station, carrying with it the smell of burnt metal and something else, something old and sad that had no name. And then he entered. Varrock had to bend down to fit through the doorway. His massive body barely squeezed through the human-sized opening. When he stood up straight in the corridor, his head nearly touched the ceiling. The lights flickered around him, as if even electricity was afraid. Behind him came 4 of his guards. They were smaller than him but still terrifying, with weapons that glowed with deadly energy. They spread out on either side of their commander, ready to strike down anyone who dared to challenge them. The humans in the corridor pressed themselves against the walls. Some fell to their knees. Others looked away, unable to meet those burning red eyes. A child somewhere was crying, the sound muffled by a parent's desperate hand. Varrock walked slowly through the station, his heavy footsteps making the floor shake. He looked at the bare walls where decorations had once hung. He looked at the empty corners where trees had once stood. He saw the fear in every human face, and a cold satisfaction spread through him. This was what he lived for now. This was the only feeling that filled the emptiness inside him. The pain of others was his only comfort. He came to the main common area, a large room where the people of the station gathered for meals and meetings. It had been the heart of their celebration. Now it was empty and cold, stripped of everything that had made it special. Commander Minji stood in the center of the room, her back straight despite her fear. She was trying to protect her people by facing the monster herself. You have taken what you came for, she said, her voice only shaking a little. Please, leave us in peace. Varrock looked down at her like she was an insect. Peace? His voice echoed through the room, making everyone flinch. There's no peace. There is only darkness. You humans so young, so stupid. You think your little lights and decorations can keep the darkness away? Nothing keeps the darkness away. Nothing. He raised one massive hand and swept it across a table that still held a few paper plates and cups from an earlier meal. They flew across the room and shattered against the wall. Where are your songs now? Varrock demanded. Where is your joy? I have taken it. I have taken it all, just like I have taken from 1,000 worlds before you. And you will remember this. You will remember that nothing beautiful lasts. Nothing good survives. Everything ends in ash and silence. The humans said nothing. What could they say? They were helpless before this creature who had conquered entire systems. Varrock began to turn away, ready to leave and let these broken people suffer in their empty station. But then he stopped. Something had caught his eye. In the corner of the room, mostly hidden behind a group of adults, was a small figure. A child. And in the child's hand was something white and delicate. Something his drones had missed. Varrock's eyes narrowed. He pushed through the crowd of humans who scattered like leaves before a storm. The adults tried to form a wall to protect the child, but one look from Varric made them step aside. They were too afraid to resist, and there stood Yuna. She was so small compared to him. Her head barely reached his knee. Her dark hair was messy, and her face was streaked with dried tears. But she wasn't crying now. She was looking up at him with an expression he had not seen in centuries. Curiosity. "Why is that in your hand?" Vorak demanded, pointing at the paper snowflake. Yuna looked down at the delicate thing she was holding. Then she looked back up at the terrifying creature before her. Her father stood nearby, frozen with fear, wanting desperately to grab his daughter and run, but knowing it would only make things worse. "It's a snowflake," Yuna said simply. Her voice was small but steady. "I made it. Give it to me." Yuna tilted her head to one side, the way children do when they're thinking hard about something. "Why do you want it?" The question surprised Vorak. No one asked him questions. No one had the courage. He felt something strange, a tiny crack in the wall of ice around his heart. "Because it is a symbol of your celebration. And I destroy all symbols of celebration. But why?" Yuna asked again. "Why do you hate pretty things?" Vorak stared at her. His red eyes burned with emotions he didn't understand. Anger, yes. But something else too. Something that felt like pain. "Give it to me, child. Now." Yuna looked at the snowflake again. She had worked hard on it. She had cut it carefully, even though her small fingers couldn't make perfect shapes. She had planned to give it to her mother, but her mother wasn't here. And this sad, scary creature was. She held the snowflake out toward him. "Okay," she said softly. "You can have it." Vorak reached down, ready to snatch it and crush it in his fist. But Yuna's next words stopped him cold. "I made it for you anyway." The room went completely silent. Even the guards behind Vorak seemed to stop breathing. "What?" The word came out of Vorak as barely a whisper. "I made it for you," Yuna repeated. "When Appa told me about the bad person coming, I thought maybe you were just sad. Amma always says that people who do bad things are usually just hurting inside. So I made an extra snowflake. I was going to give it to you so maybe you wouldn't be so sad anymore." She stepped closer, still holding out the crooked little paper creation. "You looked sad when you came in. Your eyes looked like you wanted to cry, but forgot how. So I thought maybe a present would help. Presents always make me feel better when I'm sad." Vorak couldn't move. He couldn't speak. This tiny human child, who should have been running and screaming like all the others, was standing in front of him offering a gift. Not begging for mercy. Not crying in fear. Offering him a gift. Because she thought he was sad. Because she wanted to help. Taiho finally found his voice. "Yuna, come back here, please." But Yuna didn't move. She just kept looking up at Vorak with those big brown eyes full of something he had almost forgotten existed. Kindness. "Take it," she said gently. "It's okay. I can make more." Vorak's hand, which had been raised to destroy, slowly lowered. He stared at the paper snowflake like it was the most confusing thing in the entire universe. And in that moment, something began to crack. Something that had been frozen for 300 years. Something he thought was dead forever. The child wasn't afraid of him. She didn't hate him. She saw a monster from the stars, and instead of running, she tried to give him a gift. Vorak didn't understand. He couldn't understand, but for the first time in centuries, he wanted to. Vorak's hand trembled as it hung in the air between them. His fingers, which had crushed metal and broken bones, now seemed uncertain what to do. The paper snowflake looked impossibly fragile against Yuna's small palm. The silence in the room was so complete that people could hear their own heartbeats. No one dared to breathe. No one dared to hope. They all expected Vorak to suddenly snap back into his rage. to destroy the child who had dared to speak to him like a person instead of a monster. But the rage didn't come. Instead, Vorak slowly, carefully, took the snowflake from Yuna's hand. His massive fingers tried to be gentle, but one edge of the paper still bent a little. He held it up to his burning eyes, studying the crooked cuts and uneven edges. Memories began to flood through him like water breaking through a dam. He remembered his daughter, little Vera. She had been about this human child's age when the wars came. She had loved to make things with her hands, too. Not paper snowflakes, because his world had never known snow. But she made little flowers from colored cloth. Hundreds of them. She had decorated their entire home with cloth flowers for the festival of twin moons. He had laughed then. He had been able to laugh. Vera would hold up her creations with such pride, even when they were messy and imperfect. And his heart would feel so full he thought it might burst. Then the invaders came. Then the fire fell from the sky. Then everything he loved turned to ash. Vorak had not thought about Vera in over 100 years. He had buried her memory so deep inside himself that he thought it was gone forever. But this strange little human child, with her crooked snowflake and her curious eyes, had found that memory and pulled it back into the light. "You're crying," Yuna said softly. Vorak touched his face with his free hand. She was right. A single tear had escaped from his eye and was rolling down his scarred cheek. He couldn't remember the last time he had cried. He didn't think he could any more. "I don't understand," he whispered, and his voice sounded nothing like the terrible roar it had been before. It sounded old. It sounded tired. It sounded lost. Yuna took a small step closer. Her father made a frightened sound, but she ignored him. She was focused on the giant creature before her, this being who everyone said was the most evil monster in the galaxy. "What don't you understand?" she asked. "Why would you give me a gift? I came to hurt you. I came to steal your joy. I am the enemy of everything you celebrate. Why would you be kind to me?" Yuna thought about this for a moment. It was a big question, and she was only 7 years old. But sometimes children understand things that adults have forgotten. "Because being mean to mean people just makes more meanness," she said finally. "Yama told me that once. She said that when someone is being bad, there's usually a reason. And if you try to find the reason, maybe you can help them stop being bad." She pointed at the snowflake in his hand. "Besides, you didn't break it. A really bad person would have broken it right away. You're holding it careful like? That means you're not all bad. You're just hurt." Vorak stared at her. In all his years of conquest and destruction, in all his centuries of stealing joy from the galaxy, no one had ever said anything like that to him. They had begged. They had cursed. They had fought. But no one had ever tried to understand. Something was happening inside him. The ice around his heart was melting, and it hurt. It hurt so much. All the pain he had been running from, all the grief he had been burying under anger and hatred, it was all coming up at once. "I lost someone," he found himself saying. The words came out before he could stop them. "Long ago, I lost everything." "I'm sorry," Yuna said, and she meant it. That must have been really sad. It was. It still is. Is that why you take everyone's happy things? Because you don't have any happy things anymore? Vorak looked at the snowflake again. I thought if no one else could be happy, then I wouldn't have to remember what happiness felt like. I wouldn't have to remember what I lost. Yuna nodded slowly, like she understood. But that didn't work, did it? No, Vorak admitted. It didn't work. Behind him, his guards were exchanging confused glances. They had served Vorak for decades. They had never seen him like this. They had never heard him speak to anyone like this. Their hands rested on their weapons, but they didn't know what to do. Yun walked even closer. She was right next to him now, this tiny human standing beside the terror of the galaxy. She reached out and touched his hand, the one holding the snowflake. "It's okay to be sad about people you lost," she said. "I miss my Halmoni every day. She died 2 years ago. But Appa says that missing someone doesn't mean you can't be happy too. It means you love them. And love doesn't go away just because someone is gone." Vorak felt another tear roll down his face. Then another. The dam was breaking. 300 years of frozen grief was finally thawing. "She would have liked you," he said quietly. "My daughter, Vera. She was kind like you. She saw good things in everyone. She sounds nice." She was. She was the best thing in my whole world. Yuna smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Then she would probably be sad if she knew what you were doing now, right? Taking people's pretty things and making them cry? The words hit Vorak like a physical blow. Of course, Vera would be sad. She would be horrified. The father she had loved, the one who had made her laugh and held her close and promised to protect her always, had become a monster. He had become the very thing that had destroyed their world. "I have done terrible things," Vorak said, and his voice broke on the words. "Yeah," Yuna agreed. "You have. But Iyama says it's never too late to stop doing bad things. She says every day is a new chance to be better." She squeezed his massive finger with her tiny hand. "Maybe you could start by giving back all the pretty things you took. Then people wouldn't be so sad, and maybe you wouldn't be so sad either." Vorak looked at her for a long time. Then he looked at the people gathered around them, the humans who were watching with expressions of shock and disbelief. He saw the fear in their eyes, but he also saw something else. He saw hope. The tiny beginning of hope. And for the first time in 300 years, Vorak made a choice that wasn't born from pain and hatred. "Your face looks funny when you're confused," Yuna suddenly giggled. "All scrunched up like you're trying to solve a really hard puzzle." The sound of her laughter was like a key turning in a lock that had been sealed forever. Something opened inside Vorak. Something he thought was dead forever. He laughed. It was a terrible sound at first, rusty and harsh like gears that hadn't moved in centuries. But it was real. It was a laugh, and it changed everything. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself could travel. At first, no one believed it. The reports seemed impossible, like something from a children's story. But more and more witnesses came forward, and slowly, the truth became undeniable. Vorak had changed. It started on Titan Station. After his strange conversation with the human child, Vorak had ordered his guards to stand down. He walked back to his ship in complete silence, still holding the paper snowflake in his massive hand. The people of the station watched him go, too shocked to speak. 3 hours later, the drones returned. But this time, they were not taking. They were giving. Every decoration, every light, every ornament that had been stolen from Titan Station came floating back through the corridors. The small tree reappeared near the cafeteria, fully decorated. The garlands returned to the walls. The stars came back to the windows. Commander Minji received a message on her communication screen. It was from Vorak's ship, and it contained only 2 words: "I'm sorry." The people of Titan Station cried again that day, but these were different tears. These were tears of relief and wonder, and something that felt like a miracle. But Vorak did not stop there. His ship left Titan and began a journey that would take months to complete. He visited every world he had ever raided, every station and colony and planet he had stolen from. And at each one, he returned what he had taken. The Galactic Council watched in amazement as cargo ships, full of decorations, were sent to civilizations across 3 galaxies. Centuries of stolen joy, carefully stored in the massive holds of Vorak's ship, finally went back to where it belonged. Some species did not want to accept the returns. They were too angry, too hurt by what Vorak had done to their people. They destroyed the decorations rather than accept them from the monster who had taken them. Vorak understood. He did not ask for forgiveness. He knew he did not deserve it. He simply left what he had stolen and moved on to the next world. Other species were more accepting. They had waited generations for their sacred festival items to return. When they finally did, there were celebrations that lasted for weeks. Songs were written about the strange turn of events. Children were told the story of how the galaxies. Grinch had been changed by a human child with a paper snowflake. Una became famous without ever meaning to be. News reporters wanted to interview her. Scientists wanted to study her. Politicians wanted to use her story for their own purposes. But Taiho protected his daughter from all of it. She was just a child. She had simply done what felt right. She didn't need the whole galaxy watching her. When Jiwan, Yuna's mother, finally returned to Titan Station, she couldn't stop hugging her daughter. She had heard the stories during her journey back. She had been so scared, thinking about her family facing the monster alone. But they were safe. More than safe. They had done something no one thought was possible. How did you do it? Jiwan asked, sitting on Yuna's bed while tucking her in one night. How were you so brave? Yuna shrugged, already half asleep. I don't know. He just looked really sad, Iyama. Really, really sad. I thought maybe a present would help. Jiwan kissed her daughter's forehead. You have the biggest heart in the whole galaxy, you know that? Bigger than Saturn? Yuna mumbled. Bigger than all the stars put together. Yuna smiled and drifted off to sleep. A year passed. Then, too, the galaxy slowly healed from the centuries of Vorak's raids. Festivals returned to worlds that had given up on celebrating. Joy spread through systems that had forgotten what it felt like. And Vorak? He disappeared. Some said he went back to the Korth Nebula, to the ruins of his home world. Others said he was traveling the far reaches of the universe, too ashamed to show his face among civilized beings. A few claimed to have seen him on remote moons, planting gardens and helping small colonies that were struggling to survive. Yuna never forgot about him. Every winter festival, she made an extra paper snowflake. She would leave it on her windowsill, looking out at the stars, and wonder if he was okay. On her 10th birthday, something unusual happened. A small package arrived at Titan Station, delivered by an automated drone that came from no registered location. It was addressed to her. Inside was a box made of strange dark metal, clearly not from Earth. When she opened it, she gasped. There was a flower made of colored cloth, carefully preserved behind a protective layer. It was old, very old, but still beautiful. The colors were faded, and some of the petals were worn. But there was something precious about it. There was also a note, written in a language that translated automatically on her screen. This belonged to Vera. She would have wanted someone like you to have it. Thank you for reminding me that light exists, even in the darkest places. Keep making snowflakes, little one. Keep making the galaxy brighter. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. Yuna held the cloth flower close to her heart and smiled. Somewhere out in the stars, a former monster was becoming something else. Something better. Something healed. And it had all started with one crooked paper snowflake and a child's simple question. Why do you hate pretty things? The galaxy had seen many powerful forces. Armies that conquered systems. Technologies that bent reality. Beings with the power to destroy planets. But in the end, none of those forces had changed the galaxy's Grinch. It took a 7-year-old girl with a paper snowflake. Because that's what humans brought to the universe. Not superior weapons or advanced technology or brilliant strategies. Humans brought the simple power of kindness, the stubborn belief that anyone could be better, the courage to see the good in someone when everyone else only saw the bad. And that, the galaxy learned, was the most powerful force of all. The Winter Festival on Titan Station became famous across the stars. Beings from dozens of species traveled to attend it every year. They came to see the decorations, to join the celebration, and to visit the small memorial that had been built in the main common area. It was a statue of a child holding out a paper snowflake to a giant, terrifying figure. The plaque beneath it read simply, "Where kindness defeated darkness." And every year, right at the top of the festival tree, was a paper snowflake. Crooked and imperfect, just like the first one, just like all